So today's pretty epic because we're going to be doing a review and a setup for one of the best CrossFit athletes in the world, Julia Hannaford. So I'm going to get you guys sit in on this one, and hopefully there's some lessons you're going to learn from what we're going to be doing for Julia, get back to full fitness and absolutely crushing her Olympic lifts. So one thing that, first of all, just from an analysis standpoint, that I'd like us to work towards is just in the setup position. What I'd like to actually do is, where your feet are quite turned out at the moment, I'm happy with that. But I'd like to actually take the feet a little bit wider in the setup position, okay? Just a very small amount when you're setting up. So if we can move the feet kind of sitting more so like so, when you're in setup position, it's a very small change that I want to make to this, okay? In addition to this, where you set at the moment, what I'd like to see us do is actually try and bring the knees in very slightly from where they currently are sitting. So you'll notice here in the setup position how your knees and your arms are touching in this point. What I'd like to do is take a little bit more of the load in the quads. So we're going to bring the knees in very slightly in this setup position, okay? Just so that we can load the quads a little bit better and a little bit less the hips and the glutes in the setup position, okay? You mentioned how you think about turning your knuckles down at the start. Like, that's absolutely fine, but we just got to make sure that arms are staying relaxed still in this position. What I'd like you to change though is in the setup, instead of thinking about internally rotating with the shoulders, what I'd actually like to think about doing is doing the opposite. So we're pulling the shoulder blades back and down a little bit more and having the chest as the leading point in the first phase of the lift. This will stop you pulling out position a little bit in the first phase of the lift, where you'll notice that the head actually moves forward. If you look specifically at what your head's doing here, the head's moving forward a little bit as you initiate off the floor, okay? So that's a small change that I would like to make so far. Through the middle phase of the lift, you stay really patient on flat feet, which is great, and the extension position is pretty good. Shoulders are a little bit back behind the bar when the legs are coming into extension, but I believe those changes that we'll make in the first phase will correct that small positional change in the middle. In addition, because you've currently been thinking about internally rotating, when we externally rotate, we should see that the chest becomes a little bit more of the leading point through the middle phase of the lift. I'll show you something just in comparison to kind of look at in terms of what I'm wanting to see through this middle phase, okay? So if I just pull up this lift of mine just to show you next to you. So when we come through this middle phase of the lift into extension, what I'd like to see happening here when we're coming through, if we go to the similar spot, you'll notice here the difference in the shoulder and the arm position. So look at your arm, where your arms are here and here. And then if you look specifically with what mine are doing, you'll see that chest through this middle becomes the leading point.
Yeah.
That's where I want to make a slight change. You'll see then my leg extension is slightly better here when I'm hitting my top position, and your shoulders are kind of moving back a little bit excessively and the upper body's taking over. This will be affecting the maximum height that you get on the bar. Now, this may be just purely because you're doing a power snatch over a full snatch, where you would generally see a little bit more movement back of the shoulders at the top, purely because you're reaching to try and get more heart in the bar in order to be able to receive it in the turnover. We'll see from one of the other snatch videos that we'll have a look at in a moment, we may see some slight differences, but that's just key focuses that I'd like to make small changes with in that first phase from the floor, okay? So let's just jump back and have a look at this one. I believe this is one of your heavier snatches. Yeah. Okay. So you'll see again from that first phase of the lift, when we're initiating, that head movement forward, bum rising a little bit early. I don't mind this setup position, but I think naturally what will happen when we change the feet very slightly and take them wider is your hips will probably start just a small amount higher, like so, okay? Which is kind of where your back is at its strongest, where you're pulling from anyway, because you'll see when you actually take the load, this is where the back goes into this position here. You maintain then the exact angle that I'm talking about here when the bar reaches knee height, which is great, okay? Here, we see a much better position on this full snatch. And how much older is this video?
Maybe like 2 months.
2 months older, okay. We'll still see a little bit here, movement back through extension with the shoulders, okay? But the actual trajectory of the bar from the hip is pretty good. Happy with the turnover into the receive position. And even where you are in your lowest point of the catch, there's a lot of great things happening here. We see good wrist position, being back in the overhead, good external rotation here in the receive, and again, great depth and tension in the lower back, which is really good to see. So again, a lot of good things happening there. It's only going to be those small changes that we make to that first phase of the lift that I think is going to be most important, okay? Overall height which you get the bar to after extension is good. From your receive height here into your lowest point, there's still room for improvement there. So that's 90 kilo, I believe, or 85 kilo?
No, it's 100.
That's 100. Okay, brilliant. So yeah, there's definitely room for potentially a few more kilos there on the snatch, which is great. Okay, so like I said, minute changes that we'll be making there. What we'll probably do is work on some heavier dead pulls from snatch grip, and also some heavy pulls from the block. If you're comfortable doing work from the block as well, then I'll include that too. Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of the percentages that I'll be programming specifically for you on that, we'll look to work from 100 to 120%. So we'll probably be loading around that 110 kilo to 120 kilo phase on those heavy pulls and get you really strong in that position. Okay.
Yeah. Sick.
The dead pulls will also give you an opportunity to actually work specifically on that slight change in position and getting strong there. Naturally, as you're working on a heavier load, you probably will see a little bit more movement in there. But again, if we can work slow time under tension in getting comfortable in that position, I think it'll be helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
Naturally, with the clean, it's worse what happens in terms of head movement forward in this first phase of the lift and the hips rising early, okay, which gets you even further behind the bar on extension for the clean. Now we know the clean is your weaker lift, so it's naturally going to be the one probably that we're going to pay a little bit more attention to in terms of changes, okay? So what I'd like to see happening here from the start position is the toes to narrow up. So almost as though your toes when you're setting up are pointing directly ahead in this first phase of the lift. You could potentially afford to bring the feet in very slightly, or they naturally will do anyway when you straighten up with the toes. What I'd in addition like to see is the grip narrow up very slightly for you. So where you grip at the moment, kind of quite far actually away from the size of the knurling considering your height, I think we can potentially narrow that up a little bit, which will help with the efficiency and the turnover at the top of the lift, okay? When we start with the hips in a higher position, which is what we're going to look to do, what you'll find is as you transition here through the middle, you'll be able to stay over the bar a little bit longer through the middle phase of lift and not feel as like you're having to bring the bar in before you extend. You can see the problems exaggerated here in terms of what's happening with the arms, specifically where we see this kind of U shape happening instead of the chest being the leading point and the shoulder blades staying back and down. We don't want to see the shoulders rising until the legs have hit full extension, but yours have kind of come a little bit early here, okay? So again, that same thought process of slight turn out of the elbow at the start with the narrow grip will help you lead better with the chest through the middle, okay?
Yep.
You've always had quite a wide foot movement when you move into your receive position of your clean. I don't necessarily want to change that just yet with your lifting, but it may be something that we look to actually narrow the front squat foot position to develop strength in the slightly narrower point, which through sticking should prevent this from happening. Because naturally where your feet are quite wide, not only do you sometimes get stuck in the bottom of the clean, but the knees will then collapse because they're going to be a lot more comfortable driving with your feet directly underneath the knee at this point. So if we do move those feet in very slightly in the receive of the clean, I think you'll be in a much stronger position, not only to catch the bounce, but when you're driving through a sticking position, stop this collapse from happening. You're lucky because you've got strong legs, because you get those hips underneath the bar and still come out in that top position.
Yeah.
But
I think I go wide because my glutes and my glutes are a lot stronger than my quads. So I've been trying to, like the bodybuilding work I've been doing, I've been trying to get my quads a little bit stronger.
Yeah. So again, something that may be a good addition for us to add in specifically for your program would be some no foot movement cleans. I think the no foot movement cleans would get you used to actually catching the timing of that receive much better, as well as, again, the block clean work that I know you've already been doing a little bit of as well, just to help with timing of the turnover. But as I mentioned, narrowing the grip very slightly anyway will help with that efficiency in the receive, because you'll find that when you're actually receiving the bar on the shoulders here, instead of it crashing on you a little bit and the grip kind of being released, what we should be able to see is a maintenance of the hook grip in this position, which will get you out on that first bounce, okay? But all in all, really quite happy with what we're seeing. There's just gonna be a small couple of changes that we'll make in terms of that, okay?
Yeah.
Let's just finally have a look at the squat technique. When you're going down to squat, again, because of that wide stance, one thing that happens straight away when you're initiating the squat is you'll see quite a lot of movement happening here in the feet. So if we look at what happens with the feet, as you start to initiate, the foot kind of twists as you go down into the bottom position. I know you don't like wearing lifting shoes, or you don't regularly do that. It may be something that we would look at introducing, at least for the squats, just so that there's better placement with the feet, and try and hope that we're getting a minimized amount of twist that's happening. Generally, the twist will happen because you're allowing for range of motion in the ankle, which, again, as you come through anyway, your knees collapse in as we're driving here too. So if we can get the knees thinking about tracking slightly further forward rather than out when you descend into your squat, we will load the quads slightly better. But it will mean, from an accessory standpoint, the close grip overhead squat and the pause front squat will be really good to help you with that, okay?
Yeah, it's not that I don't like wearing lifting shoes. I used to wear the lifting shoes all the time.
Yeah.
It was more like, I was like, oh, if there's running and a max lift, I'm better off learning to lift in my flat shoes than the lifters.
Yeah, you look super comfortable when you're snatching in your flat shoes and even clean and jerking. I just think from a positional standpoint for the squat, let's try, even if it's just for the squat that you're doing it initially, and then we'll take a view after 6 weeks, because that may help us squeeze a few more kilos out in terms of the numbers. All right.
Yeah.
So just to kind of recap and my diagnostic in terms of what we're going to focus on, we're going to be doing a 3-day-a-week program. I will limit you to, how do you feel first of all about squatting 3 times a week, going from one, given the situation?
Yeah, like I don't think I've ever squatted 3 times a week before, but I think it's what I need to do.
Okay.
To get strong. I'm happy.
Brilliant. So we will be squatting 3 times a week then, probably 2 back, 1 front. There'll always be one harder session and one slightly lighter session that will be on volume. And then, like I said, we'll use that front squat as our accessory movement to the back squat. And I'll probably alternate that between close grip overhead squat and pause front squat for you. Okay, so we'll add some variation in on that day, which I think will be really beneficial. We're going to be obviously working on the dead pulls from block height and from the floor. I don't think we need to do too much high pulls, but it will be something that I probably will categorically sprinkle in the second 6 weeks of your program. Okay. The clean and jerk work that we'll do on one of the days of the week, probably what I'll do is add in accessory just to do split jerk, where we're a little bit behind in terms of where your numbers are at, particularly on that movement, especially with the knee. And then I would probably say, if you are already focusing specifically on isolated quad work, I'd probably add in some single leg work there as well, just to build the stability back, especially on that side if it hasn't been loaded. Although you've loaded quite heavy, I think it would be of benefit. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's the plan of attack. And then on the clean, obviously we've got some changes to start position, slightly higher hips, narrower grip at the start, and then again the dead pull work that we'll do from there will strengthen you through that position so the shoulders aren't moving back too early in the clean. Big technical change that I want to see happen is on those heavier lifts, you've been able to catch the bounce and stop the knees collapsing in as we're driving out the sticking point as well. Again, more than anything, especially if we know we've got meniscus issue to take into account there as well, potentially. Anything where the knee's collapsing inside is going to put excessive pressure on the knee at that point too. In terms of what I need from you on a day-to-day basis, if you can be uploading at least one video from front 45 of each of your working sets, that'd be absolutely amazing for me. Also feedback to me about how the session's feeling, what was hard, what was easy. Try not to self-analyze in the sessions, but more about tell me about how you're feeling on a day-to-day basis. All right.
Okay, as in like give me an example.
So felt really fatigued today. This felt easy at this percentage. Really struggled on this from a technical standpoint. That side of things is helpful for me to know. Okay. Any questions that you have on the feedback as well, respond to me on there and we'll be able to chat. Our direct line of communication will be on TrueCoach. Every single week on a Monday, our school will send you out a link to book into a technique analysis session. You can either do that with myself or with Sam and just select which one works best for you. Okay. Do you wear any wearable trackers?
Garmin.
Okay, brilliant. I'm not sure that I can connect your Garmin specifically to TrueCoach, but I'll have a look at it. It might just be good to see from a recovery standpoint as well, especially if you're going to be doing some CrossFit stuff around that, okay?
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome. All right, leave it with me, Julia, and I'll get you all ready for next week.
Awesome, thanks so much.
No problem, thank you for your time. So that gives you a good insight into what a technique analysis looks like. Like I said with Julia, there's lots of great things for us to be able to get stuck into, especially from a technical standpoint. She's a very experienced athlete that has some top lifts in her anyway. So it's minute changes that we're going to be making from a building back standpoint, especially after a knee injury. So I'm super excited to see what we can get with her. If you found this interesting and you'd like to work with myself and the team at Lifting Zone to refine your technique, then all you need to do is hit the link below this video and apply, and you can book in a call with me and we can walk through your technique, work out how we can get you lifting heavier loads.